The rusty Toyota Corolla's headlights pierced the early morning mist as James Carter drove home from another grueling 12-hour shift, his calloused hands clutching the steering wheel. At 44, the night custodian appeared older than his years, deep creases framing weary eyes that had endured too much grief, shoulders stooped from years of scrubbing floors in solitude. The city slumbered while he toiled, unseen by those who walked over his freshly polished surfaces each morning. But tonight was different. Tonight, the squeal of brakes and the crash of metal hitting water would disrupt his quiet routine. As James watched a school bus plunge into the frigid Hudson River, two small voices crying from the sinking vehicle, he faced a choice that would connect him to a world he never imagined touching his own. Sometimes, he would later tell his daughter Emma, heroes aren't born from riches or influence. They're forged in moments when ordinary people do extraordinary things. The digital clock on James's dashboard read 4:32 a.m. as he navigated the deserted streets of downtown Albany. This was his world, the silent hours between midnight and dawn when the city belonged to people like him, security guards, hospital staff, and janitors who kept society running while others slept. His Toyota Corolla, a 1996 model with over 220,000 miles, groaned slightly as he turned onto Riverfront Avenue. The car had belonged to Sarah, his wife, before leukemia claimed her 3 years ago, and James had kept it running through sheer willpower and online repair tutorials. Emma had been particularly challenging at bedtime, upset by her struggles to articulate why her classmates treated her differently. At 11 years old, his daughter possessed the emotional depth of someone far older, trapped in a body that struggled with coordination and speech due to mild cerebral palsy. It wasn't severe, but it was enough to make Emma an outsider in a world that often lacked patience for difference. James's jaw clenched as he recalled a call from Emma's teacher last week, gently suggesting a special needs school might better accommodate her needs. The cleaning company had offered him day shifts, but the pay cut would mean Emma spending more time alone, and the bills were already overwhelming. As James neared the bridge over the Hudson River, he thought about the medical bill folded in his pocket, its numbers a constant weight on his mind. Even with insurance, the costs were piling up: physical therapy, speech therapy, and specialized equipment for Emma's schooling. Late at night, while cleaning endless corridors, James sometimes wondered if he was failing his daughter. Sarah had made him promise in her final days, when painkillers couldn't fully dull her suffering, that he wouldn't give up on Emma. "She's going to amaze everyone," she'd whispered, her voice faint but her eyes fierce with maternal love. "She just needs someone who believes in her." James had vowed to keep that promise, even if it exhausted him. The yellow school bus appeared in James's headlights like a scene from a nightmare, swerving dangerously on the wet bridge. The driver fought to regain control, but the bus skidded toward the guardrail. Time slowed as James watched the vehicle crash into the barrier with a screech of metal, spinning across the lanes. For a moment, he thought the guardrail would hold, but the bus teetered, its front wheels dangling over the dark water 30 feet below. Then, with a sickening crack, the concrete gave way, and the bus plunged nose first into the Hudson River, sending waves crashing against the bridge supports. James slammed on his brakes, his Corolla skidding to a stop just yards from the broken guardrail. Without hesitation, he leapt from the car and ran to the edge. The bus was sinking fast, its roof half submerged, but lights glowed inside. Leaning over the twisted metal, he heard something that chilled him to the core. Two children's voices, high and terrified, calling for help. Twins, he realized, trapped in a sinking metal tomb. James dialed 911, but he knew help wouldn't arrive in time. The bus was nearly submerged, and through the rear window he saw two small faces, a boy and a girl about Emma's age, pressed against the glass, mouths open in silent screams. The water inside was rising fast, and they had perhaps 90 seconds before drowning. The decision came like stepping into a void. James kicked off his work boots and shed his heavy coat, his movements swift despite the adrenaline surging through him. "I'm coming," he whispered, as if the children could hear him. Positioning himself at the edge of the broken guardrail, he took a deep breath and leapt into the darkness. The icy water stole his breath, the cold so intense it felt like a physical blow. But he was alive, and he could swim. 20 feet away, the bus still floated, with perhaps 18 inches of airspace left in the back. James swam toward it with powerful strokes, battling the current and his own exhaustion. The emergency exit handle was stiff and slick, but James's hands, strengthened by years of manual labor, forced it open just as the water reached the children's chests. Inside, two children huddled on the back seat, a boy and girl with identical blonde hair and wide blue eyes, wearing soaked private school uniforms. Twins, maybe 7 or 8 years old. It's okay, James gasped, treading water. I'm going to get you out. What are your names? The girl was hyperventilating. Lily, she sobbed. And this is Lucas. We want our mom. Lucas held his sister tightly, his young face set with a determination that reminded James of Emma. The water was at their necks now, and the bus lurched as more water flooded in. They had maybe a minute left. James positioned himself in the doorway. Lily, you first. Trust me and jump. With a nod, Lily pushed off the seat into his arms. Swimming to shore with 2 children was the hardest thing James had ever done. His lungs burned, his muscles screamed, and the cold numbed his limbs. But Lily and Lucas clung to him, kicking as he instructed. By the time they reached the riverbank, James could barely feel his hands, but they made it to solid ground. Paramedics arrived, wrapping the children in blankets and checking their vitals. James tried to refuse treatment, but an EMT insisted he sit in the ambulance. As he warmed up, he kept glancing at Lily and Lucas, who were being loaded into another ambulance. A sleek black Bentley pulled up, and a woman stepped out, her purposeful stride radiating authority. She was about 40, with auburn hair and a tight chignon, dressed in clothes that screamed wealth. When she saw the twins, her composure shattered. Lily! Lucas! She cried, running to them as they called out, Mom! When her eyes met James's across the chaotic scene, she spoke briefly to a paramedic and approached him. Please don't get up, she said, her voice trembling. I'm Sophia Bennett. You saved my children's lives. I don't even know your name, but you jumped into that river for 2 strangers. I can never repay you. 3 weeks later, Sophia had been quietly persistent, leaving messages and even appearing at the office building where James worked nights. I want to do something for you, she said during an awkward meeting in the break room. You risked your life for my children. She offered a check with more zeros than James had ever seen, but he returned it, unable to accept. Sophia didn't stop. Emma's medical bills were mysteriously paid, and a scholarship program contacted James about opportunities for her at elite schools. Then, one evening, he found Sophia at his kitchen table, helping Emma with algebra. She wore casual clothes, and Emma was smiling, engaged in a way James rarely saw. Dad, Emma called. Miss Sophia says I'm great at spotting patterns. After Emma went to bed, Sophia spoke earnestly. Emma is brilliant. Her grasp of mathematical patterns could change the world with the right opportunities. James's anger battled his hope. Why do you care about Emma? He asked. Sophia's composure broke, tears welling. 3 years ago, I fired a woman named Sarah Wilson, she whispered. She was a night cleaner, asking for time off for her sick child. I told her if she couldn't handle the job, she should look elsewhere. 2 weeks later, she had a stroke. The stress of losing her job while caring for a disabled child was too much. She died 6 months later. The revelation hit James like a blow. Sarah Wilson, his wife's maiden name. Sophia was the one who'd fired her, plunging their family into despair. You, James whispered. You're the reason she died. The paid bills, the scholarships. It was guilt, not gratitude. Get out, he said quietly. And don't come back. The silence after Sophia left was suffocating. James stared at Emma's homework, tainted by the truth. Sleep eluded him, memories of Sarah's final weeks tormenting him. Emma appeared in his doorway, past midnight, clutching her stuffed bear. Dad, are you okay? I heard you crying. I'm sad tonight, buddy, James said as Emma snuggled beside him. Miss Sophia made mistakes that hurt our family. I'm figuring out how I feel. Emma's voice was soft. Mom said people can be good and bad at the same time. That's why forgiveness is hard but important. Days passed in a blur, Sophia's influence lingering, anonymous funding for Emma's therapy, a new program for kids with learning differences. 2 weeks later, at a parent-teacher conference, Sophia was there, looking less imposing. 5 minutes, James said. Then I never want to see you again. Emma's brilliant, Sophia said. Her mind could change the world. Not to buy forgiveness, but because she deserves it. James's anger flared. You killed her mother. Sophia's voice broke. I can't undo that, but I can ensure Emma has every chance to succeed. Not for me, but because it's right. At the conference, Sophia's advocacy for advanced programs for Emma softened James's resolve. In the parking lot, he asked, "That night you fired Sarah, what did you say?" Sophia's shoulders sagged. She begged me to reconsider, mentioned Emma's needs. I said personal problems weren't my concern and others could do her job. I saw her hope die. She cried in the car that night, James said, apologizing as if it was her fault. Sophia admitted watching from her office, dismissing Sarah's pain. James wanted to stay angry, but Emma's words echoed, "Forgiveness is hard but important." "I don't forgive you," James said. "I may never. But Emma deserves opportunities. If you're serious, we do this, right?" Sophia asked, "What do you need?" "This isn't about your guilt," James said. "And tell Lily and Lucas the truth about Sarah. They should know their lives were saved by the son of a woman you wronged." 6 months later, James sat in the auditorium of Albany's top private school, watching Emma receive a mathematics award. Her speech on fractal patterns was confident, her speech impediment no longer a barrier. Sophia sat with Lily and Lucas, now Emma's friends, who knew the truth about their connected pasts. The scholarship funding Emma's education was independent, as James had insisted. After the ceremony, Sophia said, "Emma's ready for calculus at 12. As Emma ran to James, clutching her award, he said, "I saw, buddy. Mom would be so proud." Catching Sophia's eye, he nodded, a small gesture of acknowledgement, perhaps gratitude. They would never be friends, but they found a way to work for Emma's sake. James drove home, his hands on the Corolla's wheel, looking younger at 44, hope softening his features. Emma, no longer a frightened child, spoke confidently about math. As they crossed the Hudson River Bridge, James thought of cycles and redemption. "Dad," Emma said, "will we always remember tonight?" James saw Sarah's intelligence and optimism in her. "Forever, buddy. Some nights are too important to forget." Heroes, he knew, were made when ordinary people did extraordinary things.